Also new tonight here on The Current, it has certainly been a wet and rainy spring around the QCA. In fact, this April, we've gotten about 6 inches of rain, which is more than 2.5 inches above normal, making this in the top dozen wettest Aprils on record for the Quad Cities. And we needed it. Much of our area had an extremely dry winter. But is all this rainfall enough to help erase that drought? Well, for that, we turn to Dr. Trent Ford, the Illinois State Climatologist. Dr. Ford, thank you so much for your time and for being here with us today. I want to start with what it was like before this spring rain came in. So how deep was the impact of this drought?
Yeah, deep is a really good way to put it. Just to give you an idea, you just mentioned Quad Cities got 6 inches of rain in April so far. Um, Around that much rain fell in the Quad Cities between September and March. So going throughout this whole winter. So what that meant was that it was extremely dry, and we saw soil moisture, water table levels, and even the Rock River, which is always seemingly in a perpetual state of flooding, dropped down to some pretty significant low levels. So we had a lot of deficit to make up, and March and then now April has really done wonders for getting us out of this drought.
Yeah, let's talk about that. When we talk about drought, I can't help but think, there's topsoil and there's all these other layers of the earth and soil that rain sometimes can't penetrate down through. How deep down is this spring rain impacting?
Yeah, it's finally gotten down to our deeper levels. So, quick hydrology lesson here. When we go to drought, drought works from top to bottom. So, we got the topsoil layer, call it the top maybe foot or so, and that dries out pretty quickly. We can only go maybe a couple months in drought. We'll see that topsoil really dry down. If we keep going in drought like what we did over the last several months, we start to see deeper layer soil start to really be affected. And that's when our water table level, which is that kind of area of when the soil's saturated, really start to drop down.
We've been having some technical difficulties today. Crazy. But we are speaking with Dr. Trent Ford. He is Illinois' state climatologist. And we've been talking about all of this rain that we've gotten this spring and how it's impacted the drought. Dr. Ford, before we had some technical issues, we were talking about this April, we've had the same amount of rain here locally that we had from last fall all the way to March, which is remarkable. And a few weeks ago, you were speaking to our friends at Capital News Illinois about some of these critical rivers in Illinois, like the Kankakee and the Sangamon and the Mason, that were getting to really low levels. Is that fixed now?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, it's amazing what a couple weeks of, in some cases, too much rain will do. One of the things is it brings those rivers up, and the big things we've seen those water table levels come up, which means not only will the rivers come up, but they'll stay up, and that's the big thing. So the Sangamon River is probably the one that's been most affected. That runs from not too far here in Champaign all the way to towards Springfield, and we've seen its levels come pretty close to average for this time of the year. Obviously, most rivers north of I-80 now are well over their normal stage. So yeah, I mean, for the central and northern parts of the state, we've done a really good job of finally bringing those rivers up, and we can say we're for the most part out of drought.
Hmm. So then let's zoom out a little bit. I've lived here for over 6 years, and for all of those, drought has been a huge reoccurring topic on both sides of the river. So is this just our normal now? Is this something we have to get used to?
No, is a short answer. So not really something that's anything of like a new normal. We have been in a period, like you mentioned, about 6 or 7 years now, where we've had a kind of this repeat frequency of drought. But if you were to go back between 2015 and 2019, that was a 5 6 year period that was the wettest on record for much of Illinois and for Iowa. So we've just been in this kind of cycle of very, very wet and very dry. So the fact that we've had frequent droughts in the last few years doesn't necessarily mean that we have a higher risk of drought this year or next year. And like you kind of mentioned, if we were looking back at the start of March, I was really concerned about drought, especially in the central part of the state. But we've really improved, and I think we've set in good motion to have enough moisture through the growing season for much of the area.
So that kind of brings us to our final question, more forward thinking. I know you can't predict the future or what the weather's going to do, but how do you feel about our rain and drought chances for this summer?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the outlooks that are decidedly undecided for the summer. So if we look at them, that's equal chances of warmer, cooler, wetter, drier, right? And it's like, why do people get paid to do this? So the what we can really take away from that is that there isn't any kind of really strong drought signal. We're seeing that in the southern plains, Texas, Oklahoma, but not for eastern Iowa or for Illinois. So that gives us a really good idea that, hey, we have enough moisture in the ground right now. If we don't go into a really prolonged hot, dry spell, which is not being forecasted, I think we should be okay. Yeah, there may be periods of time where we don't get quite enough drought to keep the farmers happy, but for the most part, we should be pretty good away from those kind of longer term drought problems that have plagued the region over the last few years.
It's so fascinating. And like you said, it's something nobody can control, but we're definitely going to keep an eye on. And we'll talk to you soon, maybe at the end of the summer, see how all this played out for us. Dr. Ford, thank you so much for your time here today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And if you guys at home want to share this story, our online version is up at WQAD.com underneath the As Seen on TV tab.